Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. Ever since President Trump got back into office and DOGE started finding tons of waste, fraud, and abuse, the deep state has been fighting back against it. They say that while there is some fraud, it's simply not that much. And we even have judges stopping the executive branch from cutting funding. So what can actually be done about America's out-of-control spending? Joining us now to discuss that is the Vice President of the Government Accountability Institute, Eric Eggers. Eric, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Good to be with you both.
The optics are not great for Democrats because it appears that they oppose rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. Maybe that's not true. It's the optic. But maybe they are just opposed to the means by which it's happening. Can you parse that out for us?
Yeah, I think maybe both things are true. I think on the one hand, it would be a poor reflection on them and the job they've done over the last 4+ years if, in fact, they've presided over a system that was as rife and rampant with waste, fraud, and abuse as it appears to be. Remember, this is the Democrats from Joe Biden to the people in charge now that helped dole out unprecedented sums of money in the name of COVID relief. And we now know that billions of dollars worth of that money went to places it shouldn't have gone, not just for COVID, but for other sort of green energy, climate fantasies. So I think on the one hand, it's a bad look for Democrats to admit that what they've been presiding over is so wasteful of taxpayer dollars. I think on the other hand, their business model is being fundamentally upended. If their job has been to pass out taxpayer-funded goodies to their buddies and that spigot has been shut off, then it's almost like that scene in Office Space. If Democrats can't give away money anymore to their benefactors, then it's like, what would you say you do here?
Yeah, the operation
and the answer, unfortunately, is like not a lot. So I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, without the power of the purse, there's no power at all in Washington. That's exactly right. Eric, I want to talk a little bit about something that Congressman Andy Harris mentioned on the show earlier today. He's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, on board with getting a temporary CR to get to this bigger savings. He said he thinks that the combination of Congress enacting rescissions, meaning pulling back money that had previously been approved, and President Trump simply impounding money, refusing to spend it even if it was authorized, that there could be larger savings than most Americans are counting on. Those are two terms we seldom hear in Washington, rescission and impoundment. Tell us, do you think there's maybe a historic cut on the horizon for us?
You know, that's an excellent idea, and I commend the congressman for suggesting it. I did some research on this because it's a term that we're now using. So President Reagan used, I think, 101 rescissions, or just over 100 in his 8 years in office. George W. Bush used 0. And, you know, I think it just speaks to the shift that we've seen. Some people wanted to take cutting the budget seriously and cutting the deficit and debt seriously, and others clearly have not. And I think it's telling that George W. Bush hasn't, you know, from then on, basically, we started to see Washington, D.C. become incredibly wealthy and incredibly powerful. The 4 wealthiest zip codes in this country are not around Silicon Valley, which actually produces something. They're around Washington, D.C., which only collects our money. And so I do think the fact that they're even suggesting using things like this is a very promising sign for the United States taxpayer. And, I mean, consider this. You're now seeing the media narrative shift from, well, how much waste, fraud, and abuse could there be, to now that $105 billion with a B has been identified. The narrative is not, oh, my gosh, I can't believe there's that much waste, fraud, and abuse. It's, well, that's not enough to really get the U.S. debt and deficit under control. I mean, that's how successful this DOGE effort has been. Yeah, so we're now in however many figures that is. I think it's 9. And so, you know, and the cuts will only continue. And there's still a lot more to look at. They haven't even got to the Pentagon yet, John. Yeah. So, I mean, imagine how much more money they can find.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
I hear the chainsaws going already.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Stacey Abrams never called off her gubernatorial race, but she might have to call off her NGA that she started that apparently was only able to raise about $100, but it got a really nice injection of $2 billion. What do you anticipate the fate of this organization is going to be, and where did that money go? What was she doing?
Well, it was Biden administration executives themselves that said they were tossing gold bars off the edge of the Titanic as this thing was sinking. Here's what's crazy, is this is part of a $20 billion effort from these things that were sort of invented under the EPA, these new loan programs, which, by the way, the Inspector General for the EPA testified to Congress and said, We cannot monitor this money. You have not given us a mechanism by which to make sure the money goes to where it's supposed to go. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised that it didn't. In fact, it went to these new nonprofits. As you noted, Stacey Abrams' nonprofit collected $100 in 2023, and now she's connected to this thing called Power Forward Communities, which is getting something like $4 billion or $2 billion. There was two other organizations that collected, I think, between $7 and $5 billion under the same program. And here's the crazy thing about that. Stacey Abrams, she's done a lot of things. She's been an election denier. She's been a candidate for every office in Georgia that you can imagine. You know what she's not? Is a scientist. And so you have all this green energy money that's going to people that are affiliated with people like Stacey Abrams. The other group is affiliated with somebody who came from Obama's Fannie Mae. And actually, and no kidding, another group is led by somebody who used to be in charge of the loan program at the Department of Energy under the Obama administration after the cylinder scandal. But none of these people are in charge of making sure that the technology that we're allegedly funding actually exists or can do what we're paying it to do. In fact, it's quite likely that it's not. So it's clearly a money laundering operation to funnel, and I think it's even been admitted this week, it was funneling get out the vote operations in these key states or trying to go after the black and brown communities, just like the Obama executive order, or excuse me, the Biden executive order to weaponize the federal government as part of the get out the vote effort ahead of the 2024 election. It's a scandal, and our money paid for it.
Yeah, and Eric, we should point out GAI did all the great work that actually identified the Stacey Abrams grant and that really suspicious set of circumstances. Of course, that was part of the reason it got canceled. Great work, you and everybody else at the Government Accountability Institute doing some of the great investigative journalism we need in this country. Such an honor to have you on the show tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And it's because of programs and websites like yours that we're able to continue to point out the hard truths that the American people need to hear. So thank you very much.
You're giving us those hard truths, and they're well sourced and well factually based. That's what we love about the GAI.